Imagine floating in the absolute void of space, enveloped by an endless, suffocating darkness, when suddenly a mesmerizing band of ethereal light appears out of nowhere. It looks like a miracle, a celestial glow welcoming you to the cosmos. But what if I told you that this breathtaking halo was actually a silently swirling cloud of microscopic daggers waiting to tear apart anything it touches? Funny Science warmly welcomes you, ladies and gentlemen. If you find yourself captivated by the dark, untold secrets of our universe, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button to support the channel and give us the motivation to bring you more mind-bending videos like this in the future. Returning to that mesmerizing light, this was the exact haunting illusion that the Apollo 8 astronauts witnessed as they gazed out into the cosmic abyss. They were spellbound by the glowing band hovering in the dark, entirely unaware of the sinister secret it concealed. The universe, it seems, has a deeply twisted sense of irony. This was not the gentle glow of distant starlight. It was a phenomenon born of violent electrostatic forces lifting lunar dust directly into the vacuum. When we think of dust or dirt on Earth, we imagine soft, harmless soil shaped by wind and water. However, the moon's regolith is a completely different, almost demonic beast. I cannot help but feel a chill down my spine when I realize how it was formed. For billions of years, the lunar surface has suffered a relentless, brutal bombardment of micrometeorites. With no atmosphere to soften the blows, these hypervelocity impacts flash melt the rock, instantly shattering and freezing it into microscopic, razor-sharp shards of jagged glass. Combined with the intensely charged environment of the moon, this beautiful glowing apparition transforms into a highly electrified floating sea of glass. It is a silent, invisible, and deeply terrifying threat, proving that in the unforgiving realm of space, the most poetic and awe-inspiring sights are often the deadliest traps waiting for fragile human explorers. To truly grasp the nightmare hidden within that floating sea of glass, we must look down at the boots of the men who actually walked through it. When the Apollo astronauts finally descended onto the lunar surface, they expected a barren, lifeless landscape, but what they encountered was an environment that aggressively fought back against their presence. The lunar dust did not just settle on their suits, it clung to them with a terrifying electrostatic desperation. Because the moon lacks a protective atmosphere, relentless solar radiation bathes the surface, giving the dust particles a strong electrical charge. Imagine walking through a room filled with crushed fiberglass that magnetically attaches itself to every inch of your body. That was the grim reality for these pioneers. The abrasive shards dug deep into the Kevlar-like fabric of their spacesuits, fraying the material and compromising the vital seals that kept the cold vacuum of space at bay. Some astronauts reported that after only a few brief lunar walks, the outer layers of their multi-million-dollar boots and gloves were practically chewed to pieces. Furthermore, it possessed a bizarre, haunting characteristic that no scientist on Earth had predicted. It had a scent. When the astronauts returned to the safety of the lunar module, repressurized the cabin, and removed their helmets, they were hit by a harsh, acrid odor. They described it as smelling exactly like spent gunpowder. The sheer surrealism of smelling explosive residue in a sterile spacecraft hundreds of thousands of miles from Earth is something that still gives me goosebumps. It was as if the moon itself had been firing warning shots at them. The dust coated their instruments, smeared their visors, and stubbornly refused to be brushed away, acting less like inert soil and more like a relentless infection determined to break down their fragile barriers. But the terror of this abrasive parasite did not stop at the outer layers of their spacesuits. It found its way inside, invading the very air the astronauts breathed. Once the dust infiltrated the supposedly safe haven of the lunar module, it transformed from a mechanical nuisance into a direct, horrifying biological threat. Picture those microscopic, jagged shards of flash-melted glass floating freely in the zero-gravity cabin, completely invisible to the naked eye. The astronauts had no choice but to inhale this alien terrain. During the Apollo 17 mission, astronaut Harrison Schmitt experienced what NASA doctors later dubbed Lunar Hay Fever. Almost immediately after breathing in the dust-laden air, he suffered from severe congestion, intense throat irritation, and violently watering eyes. To me, this is one of the most chilling details of the entire Apollo program. Schmidt was essentially breathing in thousands of tiny razor-sharp blades that were microscopically lacerating the soft, vulnerable tissues of his respiratory system. On Earth, we know all too well the devastating effects of inhaling fine particulate matter, such as the deadly lung disease silicosis suffered by miners or the tragic consequences of asbestos exposure. Now amplify that danger tenfold because lunar dust has never been smoothed by wind or water. Its edges remain as sharp as surgical scalpels. The human body evolved to filter out the natural dust of our home planet, but it possesses absolutely no evolutionary defense against the jagged, toxic regolith of the moon. The realization that the very ground of our nearest celestial neighbor is entirely incompatible with human biology is a profound and sobering thought, painting a picture of a universe that is not merely indifferent to our existence, but one that is actively molecularly hostile to our flesh and blood. Knowing that this jagged dust can tear through human lungs forces us to face an even more daunting reality regarding our fragile machines and our grand visions for the future. The Apollo missions, for all their historic glory, were little more than brief, daring camping trips, lasting only a few days on the surface. Now, as humanity stands on the precipice of the Artemis era, with dreams of establishing permanent lunar bases and enduring habitats, the dust shifts from a temporary hazard to a monumental engineering nightmare. If this relentless grit could chew through spacesuits and jam-locking mechanisms in a matter of hours, what would it do to a permanent settlement over the course of months or years? The stakes are unimaginably high. This electrostatically charged menace threatens to coat enormous solar panels, slowly starving entire colonies of their life-saving power. It seeks to infiltrate the thermal radiators, causing vital life support systems to overheat and fail in the desolate void. Every rover wheel, every airlock seal, and every mechanical joint becomes a ticking time bomb of friction and wear. I often find myself staring at the conceptual art of gleaming, futuristic lunar cities, feeling a deep sense of dread knowing the invisible war that must be fought just to keep the lights on. We are not just battling the cold or the vacuum, we are fighting the very ground we wish to build upon, designing habitats that can self-clean, developing spacesuits that repel static cling, and engineering moving parts that can operate while bathed in abrasive glass are brutal, uncompromising hurdles. The moon is effectively holding our ambitions hostage, demanding absolute perfection from our engineers before it allows us to stay. Yet, despite knowing that we are trying to build a future in a realm that wants to grind us into oblivion, humanity refuses to simply walk away. This, perhaps, is the most beautiful and deeply emotional part of our entire cosmic journey, as we are a species defined by our sheer stubborn audacity. Instead of cowering from the terrifying reality of lunar dust, brilliant minds across the globe are turning this nightmare into a crucible for unprecedented innovation. Scientists are currently developing electrodynamic dust shields, essentially utilizing the very electrical charge that makes the dust so clingy to magnetically repel it away from critical surfaces. They are designing next-generation spacesuits that are entered from the back, directly attaching to the outside of rovers so the dust never actually comes inside the living quarters. When I think about these solutions, I do not just see cold engineering, I see the indomitable human spirit fighting back against the dark. The moon is not merely a stepping stone, it is the ultimate proving ground. It is forcing us to become smarter, more resilient, and more united in our technological endeavors. Yes, the lunar surface is covered in a silent, swirling storm of microscopic daggers. Yes, it smells like gunpowder and wants to tear apart our lungs and our machines. But that hostile environment is exactly what will forge us into a species capable of crossing the vast, unforgiving oceans of deep space. We will return to that mesmerizing, dangerous light in the dark. We will walk upon that sea of glass once more, not with ignorance, but heavily armored by human ingenuity, ready to claim our rightful place among the stars.
Lunar dust reveals a harsh truth. Space is not a friendly playground, but a dangerous frontier. What Apollo astronauts encountered was not harmless dust, but microscopic, sharp, electrically charged particles that threatened their suits, lungs, and equipment. As we move toward the Artemis era and long term lunar missions, this dust becomes a major challenge, forcing us to confront a surface that actively resists human presence. Yet, this adversity drives innovation. Instead of retreating, humanity is developing new technologies, advanced spacesuits, and protective systems to overcome these dangers. The moon becomes a testing ground, pushing our limits and proving our resilience. Our mission is not just exploration, but adaptation and survival in extreme conditions. The lesson extends beyond space. Just like lunar dust, life presents harsh obstacles that can wear us down. But these challenges are also opportunities. Instead of giving up, we must adapt, grow, and become stronger. The very difficulties we face are what shape us into better versions of ourselves. So the question remains, would you risk stepping onto the moon's dangerous surface or stay safe on Earth? Share your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this journey, consider subscribing to support more meaningful content.